Hello and welcome to another EmuGUI tutorial after more than a month. Anyway, on Discord you decided that we are going to install Windows Server 2003, the 32-bit version. And for those who don't know who I am, I'm Lucien Robin. Okay, Nicolas Lucien. I'm also running my own channel here. And if you're interested and if you want, you may like and subscribe, but only if you want to. Same goes for Odyssey users, for those who use that. Of course, before we get started, you need a few things. Of course, you need a Windows or Linux system, at least Windows 10 or a Linux distribution which supports EmuGUI. Okay, you can just try out. Do whatever, yeah. You also need QEMU, otherwise it won't work, and EmuGUI doesn't include that because of the license. I don't know why, but maybe I'll do something about it. Maybe I won't. Yeah. Anyway, we are going to use, of course, you should close out of your browser, and for this tutorial, you also need Windows Server 2003, your copy, and you need to make it an ISO file, at least on Windows. On Linux, you can just go with dev sr0 or something like that, but on Windows, you need to make this an ISO file. You need to get an ISO file. How, I won't tell you for copyright reasons. Yeah. And before you ask, yes, I do have Age of Empires on my system. It's basically one of those games my computer can handle. Anyway, I'm going to use EmuGUI 1.1.5.5413 Windows 10 64-bit, version 22H2 of course. However, you can also use Linux, what I would recommend if possible. I would also use Linux if it wasn't for my keyboard. We have to work with whatever works, so I also created a separate profile for EmuGUI. So this language will be English here. Of course, I can also make German versions. Also, you can join the Discord server. So, of course, I have to do that. Now that you have done all of that, click on New Virtual Machine and give this thing an appropriate name. In my case, Windows Server 2003 i386. Click Next. For machine, like I may decide. For the CPU, it depends. If you're on Linux and want to use QEMU, use the host, and the others should select the QEMU 64 processor. Or, oh no, the QEMU 32 processor, right. We are not talking about Vista. You could also take the others, but in my case it's going to be the QEMU 32 for the RAM. So it depends on your edition. In my case, I have the standard edition of Windows Server 2003 R2. So for this and the enterprise and the web editions, you need the 133 MHz processor. And for the data center, you need 400 MHz. And Italian-based systems must bring 733 MHz, but you can't emulate Italian systems at all. It's recommended for all x86 editions to have at least 550 MHz. For the memory, the minimum amount of RAM for all editions is 128 MB of RAM, except for data center. You require 512 MB of RAM there. Maximum 2 gigs for web, 4 gigs for standard, 32 gigs for enterprise, or 64 gigs for data center. Okay, I don't believe you, Microsoft. So we're using the standard edition, so we go with 2 gigs, that should be enough. Of course, you must create a new virtual hard drive, and you need 1.5 gigabytes of disk space and folder, and we go Windows Server 2003 x86. And of course, you can take the IMG file. PHP5 formats is QCode2 is what I recommend. And you should have at least 20 gigs of space if you want to do something more than just trying it out, for at least 40 gigs. Or even better, 60, but really 40, very nice to the compute host. Anyway, for the VGA, you can choose the servers one. For the network, select the RTL8139, and this is depreciated. Don't use that, it's going to be removed. Instead, use the PS2 mouse here. Click next. Click next, we don't need that. Sound card, sampler. Take the AC97 if you want sound. This is Windows, so it doesn't interfere with the sound system. I can do it here. CPU cores, you can leave it to 1. On dual cores you should. Maximum should be 2 for those who have at least a quad core. But we leave it to 1 as I only have a dual core. Take the PS2 keyboard, and for the keyboard layout, I'm German, sorry. Leave all of these empty, we're not using Linux. For the acceleration, use TCG if you want, if nothing else works. So Haxim if your computer supports that, or WHPX, and on Linux KVM if your computer supports that. Okay, nowadays all computers who should support KVM, but as I'm on Windows and my computer doesn't support any of the two here, I have to go with TCG or none. Click next, add USB support, USB EHCI, and you don't need any additional arguments. Click finish. It will take up to 10 seconds until the VM shows up. Now close out of anything unnecessary. Start the virtual machine. Check your CD-ROM. And we'll take this CD1. Boot from D. Leave the TPM thing away. Date and time. Set the system. And start the VM. It will take a while for the VM to start up. So be patient. Use them to fit or unshow tabs. Or even better, you can do full screen, what I'm going to do now, so we can see everything from the VM in one glance. Start up Windows, press enter. Agree to the license terms, install, and format the partition using the NTFS file system. And now setup is copying the files, and that'll take a while, especially when you emulate it and only assigned one core, and double especially when you're recording this like me. We'll look back into it when this thing is done. Now you can reboot the computer, or let it reboot, and do not press any key here, otherwise you will get back to the installation. And if you don't use full screen mode, the mouse pointer might glitch, so I recommend that. And again, this will take a while. So about the keyboard layout, click on, if you're using a different keyboard layout than this here, click on details, then add. Then select your keyboard layout, in my case German, click OK. Select it as the default, click on apply, click on OK, click on next. Next, type in your name and organization. Okay, the licensing mode. So this is either per server or per device or per user. Each connection must have its own client access license. I don't know why, but apparently their decision, their property. I just don't get it. In our case, the server is not going to be connected with anything. Click next. Except for the internet, of course. If you want to type in a password, in my case, I will continue without it. Select your time zone. In my case, I'm in that one. Click next. And now it's installing the network. This will take a while. Again, we're back and just typical settings and click next. Now, let's wait a bit. Again, we are back, and as soon as this comes, again, do not press any key. Otherwise, you will be redirected back to the start. We don't want this, so don't press the key. Now that Windows is starting up, and now we can't press Control Delete because this would interfere with the operating system you're running. We do it that way. And then we type in send key, Ctrl Alt Delete, and press enter. We have to wait until it boots, and this can take a while. Okay, for those who have installed Windows Server 2003 R1, you are now finished. You have now completed setup. For those who have Windows Server 2003 R2, like me, you still need to continue. For that, we go to the Compat Monitor 0 and type in info block. And then we type in change IDE 1-CD0 or whatever you have. And then important, use the // not the \\. And on Windows, auto-completion doesn't work. After you did that, click on OK. Then click next, accept, click next again. And this will again take a while. Okay, now if you have done that, click finish. And now you can't install any updates anymore, not this way. So click on finish and close the page. And maybe you won't want to do that. What I recommend to do is restart and then type in a reasonable reason. This is to make sure the changes of the Windows Server 2003 R2 installation are applied everywhere. And as you can see, now this new branding has been applied almost everywhere. Of course, the boot screen is exempt, but you can't change it. Now again, Ctrl F, Ctrl G, Command Monitor 0, then key Ctrl Alt Delete. Press enter, and then you have it. And if you use bugs, that's of course this is an emulator. It's not this powerful. This will happen. Now I hope you liked the video. Additionally to that, what I said in the beginning, you may also suggest stuff in the comments. I say thanks for watching and goodbye.